She ruined me with a single headline. The worst part? It wasn't even about politics, crime, or scandal, it was about me. 2 weeks ago, I was invisible, just another anonymous graduate student balancing rent payments and bad coffee in Boston. Now my name had been plastered in the Chronicle, framed in sentences that made me sound like a tragic character in a novel instead of a flesh-and-blood girl. Her name was Elise Carter. Everyone knew Eliza award-winning investigative journalist, celebrated truth-teller, a woman whose face graced magazine covers and whose words could shake city governments to their knees. She was sharp, relentless, the kind of woman who never asked permission before stepping into someone's life. And somehow she had stumbled into mine. When I first read her piece, my breath stopped halfway in my chest. There it was in black ink. The quiet resilience of a student named Julia Hart, who lost her father to the opioid crisis, reminds us of the invisible casualties in America's ongoing war against addiction. Julia Hart. My name. My life. My grief. I had never spoken to her. I had never been interviewed. Yet she knew about me or thought she did. First I was furious. Who gave her the right to make me a symbol? To turn my scars into paragraphs that strangers would skim over their morning coffee? I threw the newspaper across my dorm room, paced like a caged animal, and cursed her name under my breath. But anger is a fragile disguise for curiosity. Within hours I found myself Googling her again, reading her old articles, watching clips of her on CNN panels. She had this voice, low, firm, unapologetically certain. Her dark brown eyes didn't waver, even when she asked questions that made powerful men squirm. And then there was the smile. Not the polished one on magazine covers, but the half-smirk she sometimes let slip on live TV, as if she knew she was stirring trouble and relished every second of it. I hated her. I admired her. I couldn't stop thinking about her. By the time the third sleepless night came, I did the unthinkable. I emailed her. Miss Carter, I read your piece. You used my name. You don't know me. Think we should talk. Julia Hart. I hit send before fear could claw it back. For 2 days, silence stretched like a noose around my throat. Then, at 3:12 a.m., her reply landed in my inbox. Julia, you're right. I don't know you. But I want to. Elise, we met in a cafe downtown. Rain hammered against the windows, turning the city into a blurred watercolor. She walked in like the storm belonged to her, umbrella dripping, blazer slightly damp, hair loose around her shoulders. I almost didn't recognize her without the armor of TV cameras. She looked younger, softer. But her presence still filled the room, and when her eyes landed on me, I felt pinned in place. Julia Hart, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. You look less furious than your email suggested. I'm furious. I shot back, though my voice betrayed me with a tremor. Good, she said, a half-smile curling her lips. Fury keeps me honest. I wanted to hate her in person. I wanted her to be cold, arrogant, dismissive. Instead, she was infuriatingly human. She ordered hot chocolate instead of coffee. She listened when I spoke, really listened, her gaze never drifting to her phone. Still, I didn't hold back. You took my grief and made it public. You didn't ask. You didn't even know if I wanted people to know. Her expression flickered, guilt maybe, or something close. You're right, she said softly. I should have asked. I saw your father's story in a public record and I thought it mattered. I wanted people to feel what this crisis is doing to families. But I didn't think about what it might do to you. Her honesty disarmed me. And it made me hate her even more, because how do you fight someone who admits they're wrong? Do you always use people like pawns? I asked. She leaned closer, voice low. No. Just the people I can't forget. Something inside me shifted then. Against my will, against my pride. I felt the faintest pull toward her, like a thread tugging at my chest. Days turned into weeks. Against my better judgment, we kept meeting. Sometimes it was coffee shops. Sometimes late-night walks along the Charles River. Once it was her apartment, walls lined with books and half-finished drafts. She was complicated. She was relentless. She was lonely in a way that mirrored my own. And beneath the sharp edges, Elise had a tenderness that startled me. She asked about my classes, remembered the name of my cat, laughed at my terrible jokes. When she looked at me, it wasn't as a subject or a symbol, it was as if I was the only person in the room. but falling for her felt like stepping onto a tightrope strung over fire. She was famous. I was ordinary. Her world thrived on exposure. Mine craved privacy. And yet, when her hand brushed mine across a cafe table, when our shoulders leaned together during late-night editing sessions, when her eyes softened in the moments between laughter, I couldn't stop imagining what it would be like if I let go of fear. If I let her in. The first time we kissed, it wasn't planned. We were sitting on the steps of her apartment building, a bottle of wine between us, city lights flickering like restless stars. She was telling me about her first big story, how terrified she'd been walking into a press conference full of men twice her age. I thought my voice would break, she admitted, laughing at herself. It didn't, I whispered. She looked at me, then really looked as if she'd been circling this moment for weeks. Her hand lifted, brushed a strand of hair from my face. Julia, she said softly, like a question. And before I could think, before I could weigh the cost, I leaned in. Her lips were warm, tentative, then certain. The world narrowed to the taste of wine and the press of her mouth against mine, the thunder of my own heartbeat. When we pulled apart, I was breathless. That was, I started. Necessary, she finished, eyes glinting with something dangerous and tender all at once. And just like that, I knew I was lost. That night haunted me in the best way possible. Every time I tried to concentrate on my research, I'd catch myself replaying the brush of her lips, the way she inhaled as if the kiss had surprised her too. I tried convincing myself it was a mistake, a moment fueled by wine and proximity, but my body betrayed me. The smallest reminder, her name lighting up my phone, the faint scent of her perfume on my scarf sent sparks across my skin. But Elise was Elise. She didn't do small, safe, or casual. And if I stepped further into her orbit, there was no going back. The very next day she called. You're avoiding me, she said, no greeting, her voice smooth and steady. I'm not, I lied, staring at my blank laptop screen. You are. Meet me tonight. Don't argue. And that was the thing about her, she didn't ask, she commanded, but in a way that made me feel like I wanted to obey. We met at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. I'd never been anywhere like it, fairy lights strung above, the skyline glittering like a jewel box. She was already there, leaning against the railing, her silhouette sharp against the evening sky. You came, she said, as if she had doubted me. You didn't give me much choice. Good. She handed me a glass of wine. I hate waiting. We stood there for a while, silent except for the hum of traffic below. I felt the warmth of her shoulder brushing mine, and it terrified me how badly I wanted to lean closer. Finally she spoke. I don't do this, she said quietly. I don't chase people. I don't blur lines. My chest tightened. Then why me? She turned, her eyes burning into mine. Because you make me forget who I'm supposed to be. The words lodged in my throat. I'd imagined being noticed by her, dreamt about it in restless half-sleeps, but nothing had prepared me for the reality of her vulnerability. I could have kissed her right there. Instead, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since the beginning. Are you going to write about me again? Her jaw tightened. Not unless you want me to. I studied her face, searching for dishonesty, but found only sincerity. It scared me more than lies ever could. Elise, I whispered. I don't know if I can live in your world. She reached for my hand, her touch firm, grounding. Then let me live in yours. From that night on, our lives tangled together in ways I hadn't anticipated. She'd slip into my cramped apartment with takeout when I pulled all-nighters. I'd sit cross-legged on her couch while she ranted about corrupt senators and stubborn editors, her hair messy, her blazer discarded. We weren't official. We weren't public. We weren't anything you could label neatly. But we were something. Something that burned too brightly to be ignored. And yet, the outside world had a way of intruding. One evening she invited me to a gala. It's boring as hell, she admitted. But if you come, I might survive. I hesitated. The idea of walking into a room full of powerful people, with Elise by my side, felt like stepping into a lion's den. But her hand on my arm, her pleading half-smile, tipped the scales. The hotel ballroom was glittering, all champagne and chandeliers. Elise, in a sleek black dress, was magnetic. Cameras flashed as she entered, journalists and politicians orbiting around her like moths. And then there was me, an ordinary grad student in a borrowed gown, clutching her hand like a lifeline. "Relax," she whispered against my ear, her breath sending shivers down my spine. "You belong here because you're with me." But as the night wore on, whispers followed us. I caught fragments. "Who's that with Carter?" "Not her usual crowd." "Student," I heard. I tried to ignore them, but each word scraped against my nerves. At one point, a senior editor from the Chronicle cornered us. "Elise, darling," he drawled, eyes sliding over me like I was invisible. "Who's your friend?" "My partner," she said firmly, squeezing my hand. The word hit me like a jolt. Partner. My cheeks burned, my heart soared, and yet, fear curled low in my stomach. Because now, it wasn't just between us anymore. The fallout came faster than I expected. The very next morning, an article appeared online. Star journalist Elise Carter's mystery date at Chronicle Galay. This the woman behind the headlines? My picture. My name. My life dissected like a specimen. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. It was one thing for Elise to write about me. It was another to be thrust into the public eye by strangers who didn't care about me at all. When Elise showed up at my door, she looked furious. "I didn't leak it," she said before I could accuse her. "I'd never." "I know," I whispered, though the ache in my chest remained. "But this is your world, Elise. Cameras, headlines, scrutiny. And I can't." My voice broke. "I can't breathe under it." She reached for me, but I pulled back. "Julia, I need space." The words tore from me like glass. Her face crumpled just for a moment, before she masked it with steel. "Fine," she said, her voice sharp, brittle. "Take your space." And then she was gone. The days after stretched endlessly. I told myself it was for the best. That I couldn't survive being tethered to someone whose life was always under a spotlight. I told myself I was protecting my sanity, my privacy, my heart. But at night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I missed her. The way she challenged me. The way she softened only when we were alone. The way her laughter filled every hollow space inside me. And then came the email. No subject line. No greeting. Just one sentence. "I can't write without thinking of you." My hand shook as I read it again and again. My chest ached with longing, with fear, with the unbearable truth that no amount of distance could erase her from me. When I finally saw her again, it wasn't planned. I was in the library, hunched over my thesis notes, when her shadow fell across my table. "Julia," she said softly. I looked up, heart lurching at the sight of her. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily. But her gaze was steady, unwavering. "I shouldn't be here," she said. "But I had to be." My throat tightened. "Elise, I don't care about the articles, the whispers, the damn headlines. I care about you. Just you. And if that means walking away from all the noise, I'll do it." I blinked, stunned. "You'd give that up? For you?" Her lips curved into a faint, aching smile. "Yes." The dam inside me broke. I stood, closing the distance between us, and before I could stop myself, I kissed her, desperate, messy, full of every sleepless night and unspoken word. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a symbol or a headline. I felt like a person. Her person. But love, I realized, isn't just about the moments you steal in private. It's about what you risk in public. And sooner or later, we'd have to decide whether we were willing to risk it all. The kiss in the library should have fixed everything. For a few shining days, it felt like it had. Elise and I carved out a fragile bubble for ourselves, long walks along the Charles, whispered conversations in dimly lit diners, her head resting on my shoulder as if we'd both forgotten how it felt to be unguarded. But the world never forgets. Especially not hers. Within a week, rumors swirled again. Paparazzi camped outside her apartment. Anonymous accounts on Twitter dissected my life, my family, my grief. Headlines speculated whether Elise Carter, fierce journalist, had compromised her credibility for a young romance. First, I tried to ignore it. But ignoring cruelty is like ignoring fire. You can't stop the burn by pretending the flames aren't licking at your skin. The breaking point came when I visited my mother in Worcester. She met me on the porch, newspaper in hand, her expression caught between worry and exhaustion. "Julia," she said softly, "they've dragged your father's name through the mud again. They called him a failed parent. They don't care who they hurt." I took the paper from her trembling hands, bile rising in my throat. There it was, printed coldly in ink. A smear piece using my father's overdose as a weapon against Elise, painting her as reckless, manipulative, unprofessional. Something inside me snapped. That night I called Elise. My voice was ragged, trembling. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "It's tearing my family apart. They'll never stop coming for us." There was silence on the line. Then her voice low, broken in a way I had never heard before. "So this is goodbye?" My chest ached so violently I thought it might crack open. "It has to be." I hung up before the sob in my throat could escape. The weeks after were a haze. I buried myself in my thesis, shut out the world, shut out her. I told myself it was survival, that letting her go was the only way to protect both of us. But every time I passed the newsstand, my eyes betrayed me, searching for her name. Every time I heard her voice on TV, I froze, clinging to each syllable like a starving thing. I wasn't surviving. I was hollowing out. One night, I walked alone along the river where we used to meet. The air was sharp with autumn, leaves crunching underfoot. I told myself I'd move on, that love was just another fleeting ache I'd outgrow. But when I looked up, there she was. Elise, standing across the bridge, her silhouette framed by the streetlights. As if she had been waiting for me all along. I froze. She didn't move at first, just watched me with eyes that burned too bright to be casual. Then slowly she crossed the bridge toward me. When she reached me, she stopped a breath away. "I tried," she said, voice trembling. "I tried to let you go. I thought maybe if I buried myself in work, in stories I could forget. But Julia," her voice cracked. "I can't. You're in every line I write. You're in every silence. You're everywhere." Tears blurred my vision. "Elise, they'll destroy you. They'll destroy us." "Let them," she whispered fiercely. "Let them write. Let them shout. Let them claw. They can't take what's ours unless we hand it over." I shook my head, fighting against hope. "It won't be easy. We'll always be watched, judged, torn apart." Her hands cupped my face, steady, sure. "Then let's be torn apart together. Let's be judged together. If the world insists on turning us into a headline, then let's write it ourselves." The dam inside me broke. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing against her shoulder, clinging to her as if she was the only thing keeping me from drowning. "I love you," I gasped, the words ripped from the deepest part of me. "God, I love you, Elise." She held me tighter, her lips pressing against my hair. "And I love you, Julia Hart. More than I've ever loved anyone. More than I know how to say." From that night on, we stopped hiding. It wasn't easy. The backlash was fierce. Her editors questioned her integrity. Trolls filled our inboxes with bile. Strangers took pictures of us in grocery stores, on sidewalks, in cafes. But through it all, we held on. Every attack only made us cling tighter to each other. When the world howled, we found refuge in the small things. Her hand finding mine under a table, my laughter pulling her from her storms, the quiet mornings when sunlight spilled across her face as she slept, and I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. The love we had wasn't fragile. It was forged in fire. Months later, Elise published a piece that stunned the city, not about me. Not about us, but about herself. Journalists are trained to remain detached, but I have learned that sometimes detachment is a cage. Sometimes, to tell the truth, you must first live it. This is my truth. Love is not a weakness. It is the only reason I fight at all. It spread like wildfire. Some mocked her. Some applauded her. But none could deny the raw courage of her words. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Pride. Not in myself. In us. The last time I visited my father's grave, Elise came with me. She didn't speak, didn't try to fix the unfixable. She just stood beside me, her hand warm in mine, as the autumn wind rustled through the trees. "I used to think he'd be ashamed of me," I whispered. "Of who I am. Of who I love." Elise turned to me, her eyes soft. If love made him ashamed, then he never understood what it means to be alive. I leaned against her, letting her strength steady me. And for the first time since losing him, I felt peace. Life didn't magically smooth out. There were still whispers, still battles, still nights where fear clawed at the edges of my sleep. But our love became the anchor. The world had tried to define me as a symbol, a victim, a headline. Elise had tried to define herself as invincible, untouchable, untethered. But together we found something better. We found the messy and perfect, beautiful truth of being two women who chose each other against all odds. And that was enough. More than enough. One evening, months later, as the sun set over Boston, we sat on her balcony, legs tangled, glasses of wine half forgotten. The city hummed beneath us, indifferent, relentless. Elise tilted her head, studying me with that same steady gaze that had undone me from the start. "What are you thinking?" she asked. I smiled, leaning into her. "That maybe the world can keep shouting. We'll just keep living." She kissed me then, slow and certain as the sky burned gold. And for once I didn't feel like a story in someone else's hands. I felt like home. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.